What is going on, all you minties? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and because you all asked me to, I'm going to be doing an overview of the Batman Gotham by Gaslight Deluxe Edition from DC Comics. So, join me. Okay, so, long story short, why didn't I do this overview months ago? When this book originally came out, I think sometime in October. Two reasons. Number one, I had it on order, and my order got delayed, and eventually got canceled. And I was really upset about that, because I waited 6 weeks, and I didn't even get a cancellation email. I just got my refund. So I found out through my credit card. So, reason number two, I completely forgot about it until Dying Breed Collectors, so freaking awesome, got this for me and sent it my way. So thank you so much to Dying Breed Collectors for sending this my way, because I freaking forgot about this deluxe edition. And at one point, this was solicited as an absolute. This deluxe edition was going to be an absolute Batman Gotham by Gaslight. So let's do an overview of this book and talk a little bit about what it is. So the first thing we're going to do, for those of you that don't know what a deluxe edition is, these books are as tall as an omnibus. Obviously, not as thick. And speaking of honesty, I have no idea how they were going to pull this off. Because Gotham by Gaslight, I think it's like 50 pages or so. Here's what the spine looks like. And then the back of the book. The book retails for $34.99. Let's look at it under the dust jackets. An awesome cover there by Mike Mignola. So we have this red Batman logo on black board. Now, let's look inside of the book and talk about what this is and what it collects. Okay? So, like I was talking about, this book was only 50-something pages, and it came out originally in 1989. There's a really cool story about this, too. So I was wondering what else they're going to put in here. So, this collects Batman, the Gotham by Gaslight storyline, which the full title is Batman Gotham by Gaslight, an alternate history of the Batman. And then the follow-up, which came out in 1992, called Batman Master of the Future, and then Countdown presents The Search for Ray Palmer, and I'll talk a little bit about why that's included in here. Gotham by Gaslight number 1, that's part of the Ray Palmer title, and then Convergence, Shazam 1 and 2. Let's go back here to the table of contents. So here you have Gotham by Gaslight, and like I mentioned, I thought it was about 50 pages, and Batman Master of the Future. There's an introduction by the writer, Brian Augustine. And then Other Tales, the Countdown book, and Convergence. And then there's Case Files, which we'll look at in a few. Here is the introduction by Brian Augustine. And I've seen this story before. I've read about it before. And it's a really interesting story how him and Mark Waid, who was the editor at the time, came up with the idea of the Elseworld Tales. So, one thing I was going to say is I was very excited when I flipped to this page. So this is looks like a very weathered age page. It's really thick matte paper, and I thought the entire book was going to be like that, but it isn't. It's got this semi-gloss finish to it. It's kind of thin paper, but it's like the deluxe edition paper that they've used in the Justice League book by Jeff Johns and Jim Lee. So let's talk about this book without giving any spoilers. So, the idea of Elseworld is to put a popular character like Batman, like Superman, Wonder Woman, and throw them into an environment that they are foreign to. So, for Batman, they decided to make him into a Victorian-like past. So, this takes place in 1889, and it is Bruce Wayne. He's coming back from traveling overseas. He sees a family friend here. They reconnect. He's approached by investigator Gordon, and he tells him about Jack the Ripper possibly coming to Gotham, and Jack the Ripper is a famous historical figure, and the mystery behind that is all over the internet. And so that's where he gets involved with this. That's when he starts trying to figure out who Jack the Ripper is. So he dons the cowl of Batman. And even back then, he is whooping up on criminals and ends up getting arrested because people think, is Batman the killer? And I'm going to leave it at that because you don't need to know anything else but that. But what I want to show you all is this beautiful, amazing artwork. So it is written by Brian Augustine, but the artwork here is by Mike Mignola, who does the pencils. And then the amazing P. Craig Russell, who himself is a great artist. He's doing all the inks. But that's the team that put this book together. And it's got some amazing imagery. It's got a beautiful setting. And Mignola and P. Craig Russell, it was a rarity for them to work together. And they made some magic in this book. That's why this is so memorable. It's not just a crime noir story. By the way, there is a noir version of this that's black and white. It's absolutely gorgeous. But this is the deluxe edition that we were supposed to have in absolute. But this is the way we got it. So if you're used to Mike Mignola's artwork, it's a little bit different than that. I mean, we're talking 1989. So this was around the Cosmic Odyssey storyline, or when he was doing the Wolverine Jungle Adventure. It was around that time that we're looking at this stuff. And the one thing to keep in mind, the most important thing to keep in mind when you're talking about Elseworld Tales, is that they are kind of like what ifs. They're not canon. They're not in continuity. They take place in their own little pocket universe. So the events that are happening here aren't really part of Bruce Wayne's history. This is just a one-shot, a possible reality where Bruce Wayne existed in 1889 and he became Batman in 1889 and fought a historical figure like Jack the Ripper. That's the main thing to take away from this. So don't think of this as this actually happened, in case you didn't know what the Elseworld Tales were, because nowhere on that cover does it say Elseworld, nor Black Label, so I have no idea what they're even calling this line, other than Batman Gotham by Gaslight. So, that I did want to explain that in case you didn't know what the Elseworld Tales were, kind of like Superman Red Sun or Wonder Woman Amazonia. So let's look and see what else is collected in here, because we also have the Convergence story. And of course, I am censoring that final page of Gotham by Gaslight, but this is the cover here to the follow-up. I'm sorry, this isn't the Convergence story. This is the follow-up here. And this one is drawn by Eduardo Barreto. So there's a big difference between him and Mike Mignola. As a matter of fact, there are different artists in each of these segments. So it's hard to compare them to Mike Mignola because, how do you do that? Now, this one is a lot different. It's still written by Brian Augustine, but it takes place during a world fair. It's 3 years later. Batman has met this lady. What is her name? Julie Madison. He's fallen in love with her. She becomes his fiance, and he's given up the role of Batman. But Gotham needs a Batman. And this one's a little more far-fetched. This one feels more steampunk. I know a lot of people think of Batman Gotham by Gaslight as steampunk, but I never... Of course, that term wasn't really around. At least I didn't know about it back in the 80s when this came out. But maybe it was the goggles? I don't know. But this definitely has the steampunk feel to it because of airships and things like that. It's a lot more adventurous than the crime noir feel of Gotham by Gaslight. Now, the third story to be collected in here, this is by Brian Augustine still, and it's drawn by Greg Tocchini. This didn't come out until 2007, so we're talking over 16, 17 years between the follow-up, Master of the Future, and this. And this just, by happenstance, the characters from Countdown. So Countdown was a series that happened after 52, which happened after Infinite Crisis and before Final Crisis. So this was originally supposed to be called, or later on it became called, Countdown to Final Crisis. And it featured characters that Dan Didio was not happy with and he wanted to kill off, like Donna Troy. At first it was Nightwing, and then he switched it over to the Red Hood and Kyle Rayner. So they're traveling around the DC universe. This particular one-shot is they're trying to find Ray Palmer. And where's Ray Palmer? Well, he's in the Gotham by Gaslight era. Then, I love this. This artwork is done by Evan Shaner, and this is Convergence Shazam. There is such a simplicity to his artwork that gives it that old school feel, and of course the colors are helping, right? The tones of the color gives it a throwback feel to it. So this is during the Convergence era, and it's just a little mini series of 2 issues where Shazam and his family run across the Batman from Gotham by Gaslight. This one isn't written by Brian Augustine. This one's actually written by Jeff Parker, another one of my favorite and most underrated writers. So I really enjoyed this story because I never read it, and because Convergence was one of those series. I read the main series, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with this possible future, or whatever. So I missed out on it when it originally came out, and I really enjoyed this story, and I wish they had continued making this. Now, let's look in the back here for extras. Okay, so we have A House At here by Mike Mignola. We have the DVD cover, because that's right, they did make, I think in 2018, they made a Gotham by Gaslight animated movie. And here's more of that animated movie. The character designs. It's kind of interesting to have back here instead of some original Mike Mignola sketches. But hey, whatever. Was she in the movie? I haven't seen the movie, so I have no idea why Selina's in there. But whatever. There's James Gordon, Alfred, and Barbara Gordon. Barbara's in there too? Okay. Harvey Bullock. And Harvey Dent and Jack the Ripper. Interesting. Now, that is it. Let's look at the binding. So, this book has 208 pages, but it is glued binding. So that's something to keep in mind. Not that there's a lot of spreads, but I know that bothers some people. You know, sewn binding is the way to go when it comes to books like this that are oversized, at least to me. But that, as they say, is that. And that was the content, the build, and the page count of this particular deluxe edition. Let me know in the comments down below if you've picked it up, or if you were trying to hold strong for that absolute edition that we were promised, and then it got canceled. But who knows? Maybe one day. And leave the comments down below. Let me know what other deluxe editions you want to see from the Elseworld days. Myself, I'm a big fan of the Red Rain saga. I'd love to see JSA Liberty Files on there, Batman and Darkest Night, Wonder Woman Amazonia. I think those are awesome. And then Justice Riders. I think Justice Riders would be such an awesome deluxe edition. If we can't have them in absolute editions, I think this is another way to collect these books. This was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that like button. Ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We can be found on Redbubble and on Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel. And more importantly, please everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and much love to all of you.